There we go. So welcome to lecture number 15 or something like that. In this class, we're going to look at representation. We're going to delve further into it. And we are going to do so by looking at gender and representation in images and videos. And before I start screen share, I also want that would be why. I am going to screen share. I am recording. I seem to be having problems with Zoom today, so I cannot turn on closed captioning for some reason. I will be adding subtitles to the recording. The other thing I'm going to do to try to help is go to my slideshow and turn on the subtitles on it and hope that that will help. So we'll see if this works. I do apologize. Zoom doesn't always work the way that we want it to. So, as I said, we'll look at representation in images and videos today, but we'll look not only at who's represented and who's omitted, and we will go into additional groups today. We'll also look at what role do the actors play, which is important. Do they play supporting roles, main roles, and who does what? So one of the ways to look at representation, keeping in mind that when Susan Sontag wrote, women were really considered the second sex. She notes that only women have been called beautiful for about the last 200 years, and beauty has always been linked with women, which she calls the sex which, however fair, is always second. So in her perspective, the way that men were always represented and perceived was performing or doing, which gives them power. Their essence was to be strong or effective or competent. And when they are, shall we say, measured for good looks, they're looked at as a whole. So she is claiming that we look at men within a single glance. We don't measure their parts, we look at the entire person. Whereas in contrast to men being measured mostly for what they are, the position they hold, and what they do, women were measured by their beauty. It was seemingly essential to their character and concerns. And indeed, in representation today, we still see that in beauty ads and clothing ads and so on and so forth, women are pushed to be beautiful. That in turn, she says, encourages narcissism, reinforces dependence and immaturity, because we care about what we look like instead of what we do. Now, keep in mind that Sontag was writing in the 70s and 80s. That is not always the case today. We do care about what we do, what we accomplish, who we are. But at the same time, women are still pushed to be beautiful, and there is increasing pressure on men to also be exceptionally good looking and to push themselves to be so. According to Sontag, women are taught to see their bodies in parts, and to see that as there is always one part wanting. So it might be your hair, it might be a body part, it might be your nails, etc., etc. It might be your nose or your lips or your ears. There is always something wanting that we desire to look better. And back then, that was the only form of power that most women were encouraged to seek. Keeping in mind, by the way, that the norm for beauty changes over time and across cultures. I think perhaps the most damning thing she says is that women are always conceived in relation to men. I don't think that's always true today, but it is still true for a good part of representation. We have to watch for it. And this all together undermines women's abilities, their professionalism. Part of women's work is not just to do or to be what we are, it's also to work at being attractive. Hence the popularity of women's magazines that supposedly tell us how to achieve that. We become caretakers of the surface, that is our faces, our bodies, etc., and tend to be judged by it. One of the problematic things about going to important historic texts about gender is that only two genders are discussed. And the entire class should be aware that we now acknowledge and recognize a multitude of gender identities and more than simply the binary gender male, female. So please keep that in mind. I went back to Life magazine for the 1970s. I could have shown you photographs going back to 1900 that do the same thing, but I chose a single magazine. And I want you to take a good look at these ads. The one on the left, just in case you can't read it, says, "Who wants all that garbage for Mother's Day?" That's comedian Phyllis Diller with her hair all in spikes. And the text at the bottom says, "Give the little woman a lot of help. Give her an incinerator, the leftover lover." And the text below extols the power of garbage compactor, really, or one of those grinders. I had one when I lived in Boston in the sink. So we would not dare to call someone a little woman these days. It's quite degrading. I think it says a lot about the attitudes of the times. Phyllis Diller is not and did not set herself up as beautiful. She was a wonderful comedian. And one of the things that she jested about was her appearance. Moving on to the second ad, here is where here is where I would like you to start your analysis. This is an ad for a Maytag dishwasher, which was the natural choice. "We aren't just sentimental about Maytag," writes Mrs. Counts. "It's simply that our other Maytag has worked 3 busy years with no repairs." So you tell me, with what you've learned in this class, you tell me about your analysis of the photograph that's included in the ad. What's happening here, and what roles are these 3 people playing? Edgar, please go ahead.
They're all women and they're all doing, dishes.
Absolutely. They're all women and they're all doing dishes. So think about age here. What is happening? Are these women all of the same generation? Etter, please go ahead.
Yes, hi, Professor. So mother is teaching younger kids to do the dishes. There are no boys there, just girls, 2 girls, younger girls.
Yep, absolutely. And we have some comments in the chat. Kendall is saying, teaching girls women's work, what was considered to be traditionally women's work. Harry notes that the photo was also viewed from above, which is an excellent observation, like the cameraman significantly taller than the women, which is interesting because it gives the viewer the power over those in the picture. And Andrea implies that dealing with dishes is a natural responsibility and process for women. There are at least 2 generations here. So the woman is passing down responsibility for doing dishes to her children, who are girls. And we have one more comment. The natural thing is reiterated by teaching the younger girls to do the dishes It's normal to only teach girls how to do housework. Well, it was in the 1970s. I would hope that's not the case now. So Edgar finishes by saying she's teaching them how to be women according to the traditions of the day. Is this a demand or an offer, by the way? Okay, we've got demand. Yeah, you are doing quite well. The woman is a demand. The children's gaze means that we're observing them, but the woman is looking at us and smiling. So it is a demand from the woman because she's gazing straight at us. It's an offer from the children because they're not. And I am seeing some really good comments up here. Hillary says, I think this enforces the gender role that a woman's place is in the kitchen, and it most certainly does. Harry's got it. It asserts itself as the natural choice. So yeah, the dishwasher is fun for the whole family, as Edgar puts it. And that is very much the tenor of the ad. In the 1970s, this was an ad that really does show itself as reinforcing the traditional gender role that a woman's place is in the kitchen, and that her daughters will be trained to take on the same role. And the kitchen work is fun. I don't know about you. Does anybody enjoy doing dishes? I do it when I need to think, but then I don't use the dishwasher. I do the dishes by hand to give myself something manual to do and focus on while my brain is working away on a problem that I'm trying to solve. Yep, every once in a while, doing the dishes. Doing the dishes can really help. Yeah, I like that. I'd rather do dishes than fold the clothing. Yep. Yep. Well, yeah, doing the dishes means you're doing something productive and you're making dirty things sparkling clean, and it doesn't take a lot of effort unless you burned a whole bunch of stuff. At which point I give up and put everything into soak. This third photograph, now you're cooking out with gas. We can't see the text at the bottom because it's too small, but this is an ad for a barbecue. Looks like an incredibly large barbecue. So analyze this one for us, keeping in mind such things as gaze, power, and role. Yeah, Etter, I don't think I'll ever find that sense of accomplishment when I get up. I'll just leave it unaccomplished. So a nice, huge barbecue, and I think the styles of the day were rather dreadful. I seem to recall some of those patchwork skirts. Harry's commenting that this is a pretty strange use of a woman for this one. Since barbecues were traditionally a masculine sort of thing. And then continues, which is contradictory considering cooking was seen as a woman's role, and Etter is agreeing, and so is Isabella. And Edgar is saying the same thing. So who do you think the audience for this particular ad is? Yeah, this becomes interesting. It might be men, it might be women. if you recall what I haven't gotten there yet, but if you are a woman and you are reading this ad, first of all, is that a demand or a gaze? Let's say a woman in the 1970s. Farida is saying another demand. Yes, you're absolutely right there. I think the camera angle is still slightly higher, showing that the audience has more power. And yes, either slightly higher or putting us on the same level. And continues, I think the woman is being used more as a prop. Buy this barbecue and you'll have a pretty woman by your side. So if traditional male was looking at this ad, that's what the man might think. What about if a woman is looking at this though? Interesting comment from Kendall a bit. The change might be due to the gas, which would be cleaner than coal and more feminine. Yeah, that's interesting. And I had never thought of that. But obviously, if you're going to do a barbecue with the old charcoal briquettes, it wouldn't be so easy to do it if you're dressed in a long skirt and a pretty top and a chain because of the smoke and the odor. Edgar's saying maybe we're in the point of view of a man. That could be, but women were reading this magazine as well. Look what's behind the barbecue. If you're a woman, Etter, please go ahead.
I just see this point. I don't know if everyone else, but she's like more used as an advertisement rather than she's cooking, because she's just holding with, I don't know what she's holding, but she's like far from the food. She's not touching the food or the barbecue. She's just beside the barbecue. So it makes me feel like she's more advertising it, like showing it off, rather than it's directing that, oh, she's cooking on the barbecue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move away from the idea of barbecues being traditionally for men, though it is a complicating factor because, of course, that was tradition at the time. The men do the barbecuing, and you've had insight into this is a woman doing barbecuing. So that's an additional factor and a bit of a complication here. So take a look at that background and tell me what event is happening. Harry's saying there's a pool and a pretty nice house behind her. And who are those people in the background? Can you see them? Yep, there's a party, there's guests, et cetera, et cetera. So what's being sold here besides the barbecue? How are they selling the barbecue? Think about ownership, lifestyle, lifestyle, lifestyle. Absolutely. Perfect for neighborhood parties. If you buy this barbecue, you are the person with the pool and the nice house and guests wearing formal dress in daylight. You can own this. The really interesting thing is that there is no sign of her partner in here. Remember, this is the 1970s. Having a woman barbecue might just mean power, which would be really unusual for the time. that might appeal to younger women in the 1970s. It is selling a lifestyle. The woman is still in the role of cooking, but she also appears to be hosting a party at her big house that's got a big pool in the background. So women who can afford such a barbecue might be attracted to the power because they are single women who are successful. If they are not working women and don't have their own money, they might be drawn to the lifestyle as a sign of affluence. So they would want their presumably husband to buy them the barbecue. One thing you can see about these 1970s ads, though, is the assumptions about gender. To use the language of the time, marriage and partnerships were heterosexual between man and woman. We now recognize and acknowledge that that is simply just not the case these days. But that's the representation and the assumption that comes up over and over and over again. You will see very few ads that actually have women in positions of power. You see in the Phyllis Diller ad, the expression, the little woman. So this ad is targeting men. It's asking them to buy this for their little woman as a help with her chores. It becomes, I don't know, I grew up in the 1970s. There was a lot of pressure, especially because roles were changing at the time. Certain women were gaining power, others were not. My last question about these three ads. Who is not shown? We had a comment about this earlier, and I wanted to come back to it. You look at the pattern of who's included in all three ads. Who is not included? No man, no racialized people. These are all, oh yes, there is a man in the background next to the woman in the orange dress in the right-hand photograph. Obviously the appeal to romance, et cetera, et cetera. More importantly, there is no one from any racialized group. These are all white women. When we look at age, we have Phyllis Diller as the older woman. We have the one in the center as more or less in the middle. She has young children. And then if we look at the right, we have a young woman, no signs of children in the background. Still young enough to appreciate romance and dressing up and throwing parties. Yeah, Edgar's got a really interesting comment saying, I see this as a point of view of a man cooking on the barbecue. I noticed how the camera is over the woman as well as how she's behind the barbecue and looking right in the eyes of the camera, possibly at her husband. And that is entirely possible, as we will see when we get to the next slides. So we established that there's a lot missing from these ads. We now get to the 1990s. The magazine for men is on the left and the magazine for women is on the right. Analyze these for me, please. Remembering what Sontag said as well. So you're looking for demands, offers, where is the camera? Think about what Sontag said about women being defined in relation to men. John Berger pointed out that essentially men do, women are seen. Edgar, that's a very astute comment you put in. One is what men want in women. The other is how women can become that desire. Yeah, the first one clearly says Playboy. That was the title of the magazine, which was incredibly popular at the time, and it reinforces male dominance. So start talking in terms of offers and demands. Yep. If you're not reading the comments, please keep up with them. Harry's saying the camera is equal with the first magazine. Look at the direction of her gaze and look at that languishing face. What does that say? We look at the Playboy. What does the gaze say to the viewers? Yeah, so the comments coming up about the magazine on the right, that's why I brought this material into class. I mean, bringing in Playboy and Cosmopolitan is not something that I do on a regular basis, except to make these points. So the one on the left, if you look at the gaze, she's gazing directly at the viewer. Her clothing or lack thereof, and the expression on her face, clearly she's looking straight at us. So this is both a demand and an offer. And it is clearly to the viewer. Playboy was mostly bought by men. If you look at the text to the right, cover girl Shannon Tweed, Queen of the Bees, goes prime time. She is defined in terms of her appearance. Queen of Bee movies, by the way, I assume. She is defined solely for her appearance, not really for what she does or the roles that she plays. Her intent clearly is to seduce men into buying the magazine. But then the one on the right gets even more interesting, because that astute comment that Edgar said right at the beginning, the one on the left is what men want in women. The other is how women can become that desire. So women look at the magazine on the right. Instead of showing an image of a desirable man, it's an image of what women desire to become. And if you buy this magazine, you can, and look at this cover, turn him on from across the room, 52 sex tips. Let me see if I can see this. 4 talks you should have had with him by now. And this is called the hot issue. So whoever Ashley Green was, I cannot remember. We're supposed to want to look like this, and we are supposed to turn men on. I'm using we in the sense of women who look at this. So of course, if we do everything the magazine says, we should be able to turn him on from across the room, for example, et cetera, et cetera. And there's another comment here. She was right when she said women are always conceived in relation to men. Presumably this is referring to Sontag. On the women's magazine, it says things like 4 talks you should have had with. Turn them on, wow, you're man. So women don't exist for Cosmopolitan except in relation to men. all of the subheadings, as Timo has pointed out. The only thing women could possibly care about, according to the subtitles, is how they are desirable to men. Yeah, thanks, Kahish, for the steal her gutsy, get ahead attitude is what it seems to read. And Hillary has supplied us with the information that Ashley Greene was an actress who was in the Twilight Saga movies. So the one thing that I would like to point out to you about these covers is one is for men, the other is for women. Both women gaze directly at us. And women in the 1990s on this magazine and for many other ones were defined solely in the relationship to men, just as Sontag said. Obviously, the Playboy cover does the same thing, should you happen to see it. So there's a double whammy here for women. This was quite common, by the way. This wasn't just the 1990s. There's a double whammy here for women. The way that they are supposed to be and what they are supposed to work at, and that is simply being attractive for men. If you recall, Sontag also said that whereas men were perceived as whole and their physical presence was taken in at a glance, women are seen in parts. I have countless samples of ads and commercials from these time periods, and you could also pick them up from now, that do just that. So moving from left to right, what body parts are women divided into in these ads? Yeah, Sia, quite understandable. You should be angry at the way that women are treated. As I said, I remember growing up in the 1970s. I was very young, but that was my decade of moving from child to adult. And there was so much pressure. So it is still prevalent. It's just not as obvious, and we will get there. Edgar saying hair, eyes, nails, lips. Kendall saying the same. Yep. So Jacqueline Smith on the left, this is celebrity ad. Hair, eyes, hands or nails, and lips. So all these body parts that, oh my goodness, you have to work to get right. And look at all these products out there to help you do it. If we looked at magazines that were targeting men at the time, you will not see the same thing. You will see clothing ads and suit ads specifically for work. You will see advertisements for cologne. You would see advertisements for expensive watches, lots of advertisements for cars, and so on and so forth. The only ads that really touch on hair were the ones to cover up the gray. And that was about it. Yeah, Sia, you're right. This did not stop in the 1990s. You'll still find lots of this out there. As I said, it may be more subtle today, but it's still there. So we've just looked at images of women across 3 decades. Besides the obvious thing that men are missing, who else is missing? There are lots of groups missing. And here we go, marginalized women, yes, plus size models. I'm so glad someone noticed that. Race, they're all white. Children aren't there. Women are supposed to, seems like the ads are telling us, catch your man, and only one of those ads actually showed the aftermath. Children, see comments and skinny, people of different races are missing. Yeah, Nicole, great comment. People with disabilities are missing. I'm aware, as we all are, that not all disabilities are visible. But for example, people using mobility devices, take a look at whether your commercials and ads show them. So the only people shown, or all the people missing, everyone other than white women, no visible disability, people with disabilities shown. All the women shown are model-like thin, and I use that word deliberately. So we don't get different body shapes. We don't get different standards, for instance, of looks. We don't have racialized women included. All we have is a bunch of skinny, thin, white women who are supposed to present the standards of beauty of the day. So you can see the bias of those eras simply by looking at who's included, who's not. Last thing I want to ask you, roles for women. Out of these 3 decades, yeah, there was a lot of airbrushing. These 3 decades, take another look. If you went only by the advertisements and you knew nothing about Earth, what would you assume women's roles were throughout at least 3 decades? Edgar's got cooking, cleaning, and looking good. We have looks. We have to please men, to be men's hot slaves, to please others. Anna, you need to be a little more specific. Harry, to be beautiful housekeepers. Yep. Servant to men, window dressing, all of those things. So appearance and housekeeping. Don't forget the housekeeping. Yep. So look good, capture your man, and do dishes, clean, cook, etc., etc., and work hard at maintaining your looks. So there isn't a single thing in here about career or lifestyle. Well, sorry, there isn't anything in here about what women can become other than beautiful and respectable housewives. There is nothing. So all of us in this class, be aware as you go through the world and online and through your social media, there is still this fundamental push. And it is particularly targeting women. Though, as I said, men are now coming under pressure through such things as GQ, bodybuilding, etc., etc. I didn't include that today simply because all we have to do is look at the women's ads and we can see it. So moving onward. Thank you for who's missing there. I want to reiterate, and I've only listed a few categories here. You don't just look for who's present, you look for who's missing and also for intersectionality. Now, Brandy went through this last week, and I included a video as part of last week's viewings from the person who coined that term, intersectionality. That, of course, was Kimberly Crenshaw. And it turns out that the most marginalized, discriminated against, and invisible people in our culture and society today are racialized women. That is not the only category of intersectionality, but those women are the least represented and the most discriminated against. And that happens to be true for most sectors of industry these days, especially women in positions of power. So you look for race and or ethnicity, you look for people with disabilities, you look for culture, you look for gender identity. And can somebody read me the green bar on my slide because I can't see it? Somebody could just type what it says. I have the closed captioning from the PowerPoint right over that.
Oh, we can't see it either.
Yeah,
Okay,
we can do that.
hang on 1 second. Age. There we go. There are other things that I did not mention, but keep in mind intersectionality. And so whatever category you're looking at, look to see, I'm gonna have to put that slide up again. Do look to see if there is an intersection of something like gender identity and race, or religion and race, et cetera, et cetera. I turned the slides back on again so that I can get the captions on because I couldn't get them before. So we're going to go to some newer ads. And what I want you to look at is not just who's represented, but if anything has changed. And I want you to look particularly at who's doing what and what roles they're playing. And yeah, I have to copy these into a new tab and share it because otherwise they don't come up properly. If you have any questions as I go, by the way, Edgar, you have your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So I feel like I've seen this before in some of the newer ads, but where's the line on so what happens when they pander too much to every type of crowd? Like, wouldn't that make it condescending and offensive? Like, where would the line be drawn for that?
It depends.
Like,
Well,
as in they're just adding people in for said diversity rather than actually having meaning to it.
And that's problematic. And that's part of the reason, thank you for asking that. That's part of the reason I'm asking you not just to look at who's present and who's not present, but at the roles they play.
Oh, I just remembered something. Sorry, it's relevant to what you said.
Nicole, would you mind putting your hand up when you want to speak so that I can tell in advance? And please do go ahead. Nicole?
Yes, so I just remembered, like a couple of years back, there was a thing where people tried to like make classic books more diverse by putting like people of color on the covers, but the issue was it fell into like stereotypes half the time, and also a lot of the books had like actual racism in them, so like the problem was not solved.
Yeah, I remember that. I can't remember the company. It might have been Barnes and Nobles, but there was a series where one of the book companies that sells a line of classic books, such as Jane Austen and Dracula and so on and so forth, decided to update the covers and try and be representative. And so they put images of racialized people on the covers, but it was done so commercially, and their explanation was so poor that there was a backlash, not because racialized people were on the covers, but because the images that were used fell into stereotyping of the people depicted. So the backlash was enormous because this was not just a case of representing people of color. This was a case of stereotyping people of color for commercial exploitation. So the whole advertising campaign failed. Thank you, Nicole, for bringing that up. Generally speaking, what you want to look for is what are the people actually doing in the image? Why are they there? And that includes moving images and commercials. So let me see if I can pull this up. Going to be moving things around again. Sorry, please.
So I've
be
got my essay
patient.
written, and I've been working on it for about a week. So now,
Oops, gonna have to stop sharing and start again so I can click this little box. So one of the things I find ironic.
I'm going to show you how I use Grammarly to edit. Okay, so here's my essay, and I'm going to click through Grammarly suggestions in the right panel.
Is that
Charlie's my sidekick when it comes to projects around the house. But every once in a while, she disappears on me. Dad! You are so fast.
I discovered a new land with magical creatures.
Was it under the porch?
Yep.
Ugh, I'll never see everything she sees. That's why we use new Tide Hygienic Clean. It gets between fibers to remove visible and invisible dirt.
Hey, Dad! I discovered an aquatic kingdom.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide. Charlie's my sidekick when it
I was about to say it's ironic that we have to watch ads to see the ad. So it was the Tide ad. Read the ad for me. How are we selling Tide in this ad, or how is the company selling Tide in this ad? Edgar, please go ahead.
By saying children are messy and that these Tide Pods get through the toughest materials.
Okay, thank you very much. Etter, please tell me why this ad would make your dad mad.
I guess because of the stereotypes that he would be mad to see a man doing laundry. Yeah.
Okay, so that's new and different. Thank you for sharing that with us. So this is new and different, isn't it? Is this the first time so far in the commercials that we've seen that a man is actually doing the laundry and folding it? Interesting, and interesting reaction, as Etter has said, from the audience. So who's playing the main role here? Yeah.
Dad? Hi.
Yeah.
I don't know how to use the hand yet. Just trying to find it.
Okay. If you down to the black bar at the bottom and hover your mouse, you may have to click more, but you're looking for reactions.
Yeah,
You get there, you can see the hand. So please go ahead.
yeah, I noticed there is no romantic partner in the picture, in the frame, and sort of like brings a question of, is the individual raising the child alone?
Hmm?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is the romantic partner not in the picture? And so is that like an inclusive of the reality that sometimes does not exist a significant other to do the co-parenting?
I think you make an excellent point there. There is no romantic partner. And Etter has just made the point. They also look pretty happy without a romantic partner. And Sia is saying, my dad would be happy that it's a man because he'd be thinking, finally, I'm appreciated too. So here is a single man. We don't know if he has a partner or not, but the partner sure isn't here. And the dad is doing the laundry himself. Domenico has a really interesting comment here too. We look at the role of the daughter, and Domenico is saying, I find it interesting that the child is a girl who is adventurous, when in commercials, a boy is usually used for those kinds of roles. So think about the play on our emotions here. How does this ad make us feel? Or how is it supposed to make us feel with the little girl and the dad? The adventurous little girl. Yeah, Etcher is saying this ad is breaking many, many stereotypes. Kendall's saying it is subversive. So when we look at the role of the little girl, why is she there? Why can't we just have a man doing the laundry and saying, this is my job to make the clothes clean? So what is the little girl's role? How is she supposed to make us feel? Yep, Edgar's got relatability. Keep going. As a parent, most certainly. What else? Let me ask you this. Did she make you smile when she talked about her imaginary world right at the beginning? Ksenia's got it. Thank you, Ksenia. The feel-good moment that laundry is not boring when there's a kid to make you feel needed. So he's doing this for his child. There is relatability. There is love. See it? Yeah. The little girl is cute, so she appeals to our soft spot for kids generally. And instead of that monotonous job laundry, the father's motivation is essentially what we're hearing about. And that is, it gives laundry a fun, childlike appeal. The father is doing it out of love for his daughter, obviously. And it is a delightful counterpoint to the usual reason for doing laundry. Etcher has noticed something important. You need to bring evidence to your analysis, keep in mind. And so you just can't tell us about what people are doing. You also need to tell us how the story is being told. Part of that is going to be the camera angle, including in moving images, and the speed, say, of the clips. Here, the camera angle's mostly on our level. And if you look at where the still ended up, the still, he's looking directly at us. So he looks at the child when that's called for. But once again, you need to read up your notes on demand or offer and what's the implication here for the product. So I'm going to move on to the next commercial. I need to keep an eye on the time though, because I can't see it here. I do love looking at commercials, good ones, bad ones, horrible ones, because you can read so much into them. Oh, Google, what have you just done?
Our kids aren't so.
All three of these commercials, by the way, are for Tide. Here's our next one. See what you think of this one.
Our kids aren't so great at hiding. Gee, I wonder where the kids are. But we found out their clothes hide a lot. Turns out we can't even see 70% of the dirt that's trapped in their clothes, which concerned us, especially with their sensitive skin. That's why we always look for new Tide Hygienic Clean Free. It goes deep into fabrics to remove the visible and invisible dirt. And it's designed for sensitive skin. Hey, what's that? It's gotta be Tide Hygienic Clean Free. Our kids.
Okay. So we have lesbian couple with Black children, lesbian couple with transracial adoptee children. Black children, and what else can we say besides there are two moms here? Lesbian couple, what else can we say about them? What else do we know about them, especially in comparison to the children? There's something really obvious. Yep, white parents. Did anyone do the readings for this week about LGBTQ plus representation these days? If you recall it, can you please tell us either on camera or in the chat? I would also very much like your opinion of the representation in this commercial. Is this working? Or does it work for you, and why or why not? Edgar's saying it feels too transparent. It feels like I said before. So Edgar, are you referring to it feels like people were just put there?
Yeah, kind of.
So that there is diversity of representation?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Just so that there can be that, so that no group is unsatisfied.
Yeah. So yeah, there is supposed to be a reading on LGBTQ plus representation, and I thought I put it up on eClass under this week's readings, so it should be there. Sia is saying it's too much. They're trying too hard. And Senya is saying it reminds me of the Modern Family episode when a gay couple wants to adopt a child and a lesbian couple with one partner in a wheelchair beats them with their diversity. Didn't quite understand that comment, and I have never seen Modern Family. What's happening here is Tide is trying to do the same thing as last time. Cute child, in this case, cute children. It's trying to break stereotypes. So it's showing us a lesbian couple, a two-mom family. And it's trying for diversity by showing us a white lesbian couple with children from a racialized group. Whether it works or not, or how, for example, people of color would feel about this commercial, I have questions about. Right, okay, Sia, so I see the points about Modern Family now. Yes, Sakiria, please.
Yeah,
go.
I was wondering, I see some comments on the chat, and I may have a particular, I was thinking, is it easier to sell the the product with two female
Two moms?
LGBTQ individuals compared to like other LGBTQ? Because it seems like that's what's being alluded to, like
Yeah.
more representative, like it's easier to sell the lesbian.
So not necessarily lesbian. It's easier to sell white LGBTQ plus people. So in television shows and so on and so forth, intersectionality is coming in once again, by the way. It is, if you look at representative LGBTQ plus people in television roles, you'll find that the majority of them are white. So it is rare to see someone who is LGBTQ plus, who is also Black or racialized in a major television show playing that role. The impact of Tide's ads, they are breaking the stereotype of the man-woman couple. They are showing us two moms here. I don't know. I think they're trying too hard in that they have two moms and they have two Black children. So it leaves us with questions. Etter, please go ahead.
I just have a point to make, and also in the chat, Edgar asked, does it help with the sales if they have like diversity? As I mentioned it before, like one of the big brand, Victoria's Secret, was going bankrupt because CEO refused to hire any models that were oversized or different color or race, anything. So he refused it, and it was a huge downfall for them from 2016 and down, because he clearly refused it. It was his motto to have models skinny, white, and beautiful, with even blonde. So, but as a person, I mean, I grew up in a society where there were couples, men and women, and have babies. So it was a bit, first few seconds, I thought they were friends more rather than couple. Very first few seconds, it was natural. I didn't mean it. I didn't try to put any stereotypes. It just few seconds, I thought they were just friends doing the commercial rather than moms and a family.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, Etter. Ollie also has a comment, and I agree with it. I don't think it's out of left field that an LGBTQ plus couple would adopt children of color. But I think that the commercial automatically feels like virtue signaling, because we know companies use these groups as advertisement, not because they care, but because they think it will drive up sales. So this commercial is interesting because it will appeal to certainly people who believe in diversity, people who believe in human rights. That is a growing trend in our culture, and it's a good one. At the same time, Tide does risk offending certain groups of people who unfortunately still believe that families should be a man and a woman. But the risk that they will offend people with this ad is much less than showing themselves as cutting edge. And as Ollie put it, virtue signaling. So I want to...
Aren't so great at hiding. Gee, I wonder.
I didn't think that commercial was nearly as well done, by the way, just so that you know. I'm going to show you one more. I'm going to leave you with this so that we can move on, but this one is...
Hey, you have...
I'm going to go up. And...
Hey, you have to wash Jason Alexander hoodie.
It looks clean to me.
Is it though?
Look at what's happened to me. I can't believe it myself. Suddenly I'm up on top of the world. It should have been somebody else.
Be sure to get the bugs off the window.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer.
You owe Jason Alexander Hoodie an apology.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air.
Hey, that's my face! You can't just wear my face! My mom told me to say I'm sorry. Give me back my face!
Hey, you.
Okay, so very quickly, who does what in that commercial? Yeah, Kendall, finally, we have a boy doing his own laundry instead of the mom doing it. Even though she's holding the laundry basket at the beginning, he actually knows enough to put his laundry into the machine and put the Tide Pod in. And yeah, but his mom, of course, reminds him. So no father in this picture. We might want to think about why we think of the father we saw with no visible partner as single, whereas we don't necessarily assume that when we look at a woman like this one. She could be a single mom. Is there an invisible partner hovering in the background? We do not know, but we want to check our assumptions about that. I do want to move along. We'll come back to those. I want to make sure we get here before the end of the class. So additional questions to ask yourself about commercials. Who's the focus? When we looked at that last commercial of the Jason Alexander hoodie, essentially the mom is playing a very supporting role. She reminds him to do his laundry, but the boy is the actual focus, performing all the actions, and in the end, doing that defining one, putting his own laundry in the machine. And of course, Jason Alexander himself, does show up at the end. So you want to think not just about who's there and who's not, who's in the main role, who is in a supporting role, and then look at who's represented in each case. You also want to look at who's performing an action and how that action characterizes them. So is anybody in this class ever going to go out and look at ads and billboards and pop-up advertisements on social media of women and cosmetics ever again without thinking about this class? I sincerely hope you think twice about what the ad is doing, what body part it's showing, and how it's defining women. Keep in mind that most ads sell lifestyle, and you have to factor that in. Today, some do sell via social justice actions. Yeah, if anybody has any questions about the actual exercise that I believe is due next week, please ask them in the chat. And a reminder, we're asking you to do the exact same work that you did with Portfolio 1, but now we're asking you to look for patterns in images and moving images rather than just in text. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking for patterns of representation for each of your 2 campaigns. So you look for the patterns in one, you look for the patterns in the other. You're going to have to collect visual evidence to show those patterns. And by the way, you can illustrate your exercise if you like, the one that's due next week. Then you have to do the exact same work you did before. You have to look at what do those patterns mean in relation to the products, the company, and the cell, and most of all, to us, the communities of people watching. You're going to be practicing that in your tutorials today. I will put these slides up online. I want to remind you as well, you have to show us, not just tell us. For every claim you make, for every pattern you find, you have to show us the pattern. That means you have to include illustrations and include descriptions, which is an art all unto itself. So for example, part of description is making sure we know which campaign or ad you're talking about. So you label, you put in helpful labels for us. So we just saw an ad for Tide with Jason Alexander. You can say in the Jason Alexander Tide ad, I haven't shown you these commercials, but we will get there. You show or describe the evidence for each claim you make. Remember, you're going to end up with the video. You're doing exercise point 1, your analysis of representation, because you will need a script for your video. So this is a tryout. It's not graded, not the exercise. Keep in mind, you also have to include at least one of the readings or viewings to enrich your discussion. I want to just touch briefly on music today. And this is the last commercial I will show you. And then you will be free to go. I want you to think about the impact of the music in the last commercial, the Jason Alexander one, and to think about how music shapes us and makes us feel. So one more commercial before you are free to go.
Hey, Melissa, the whales need your help.
I love whales! Go, Melissa! Let's protect those whales!
Hey, Melissa, now the trees need you. The ice caps are in trouble. Hey, Melissa, now the rhinos need saving.
Rhinos!
It's hard to be an eco-warrior, but it's easy to drive like one. Introducing the most fuel-efficient crossover, the Kia Niro.
Oh, come on!
So I thought that was kind of a fun one to end with. I would also note that that one is being sold for, of course, social justice issues, and it uses humor to do so. Melissa McCarthy, of course, is a comedian who starred in Spy and shows up on SNL on a regular basis. You want to think about the way that sound moves us. I don't have time to play you 2 examples of how when you change the music, you change people's emotion, but pay attention. It's done in movies all the time and television shows. The background music tells us how we're supposed to feel. So keep that in mind. Also take a look to see if there is music or sound included in your advertising campaign. Edgar's put it really brilliantly. I need a hero. You're a hero for driving our car. A couple of important messages from your tutorial leaders. Ksenia has put the Zoom link for the tutorial into the chat. And Ksenia, if you can email that to me as well, I'll put it up on eClass. Ruby exercise 3.1 is not graded, but you do have to do it. There's also a message from Rosita. She is putting the Zoom invitation for today's class in, but Rosita, I'm not seeing it here yet. She's also emailing it to you. Great. Rosita is going to email you the tutorial link. Okay, we are done for the day. Anyone who wants to stay, who has questions about exercise 3.1 or questions for me in particular, please feel free to stay. One last announcement. Unfortunately, my office hour at 1 o'clock will not be taking place because of an emergency meeting between the chairs and the dean's office. So I will be holding office hours at 4 o'clock, but I will not be holding them at 1 o'clock. So if you have questions, please ask. If you don't, thank you for coming and see you next week.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Edgar. Thanks, Rashid. Thanks, everyone. Thanks especially to those of you who commented. Thanks, Rosita. Have a good tutorial. Isabel, you want to think about when you're talking about who is not represented in ads, how much infants would be impacted by an ad? Probably not. Ads are always aimed at the people with the money to buy the product. So infants probably not, except for diaper ads, maybe, but they still wouldn't have buying power. You're welcome. The other thing is children's toys commercials and junk food commercials. The reason they're only allowed to play at particular hours of the day is so that young people will not be persuaded and put pressure on their parents. So children's toys plays during the daytime. Junk food, you may notice, doesn't necessarily play in the daytime. Ether, do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question about the tutorial. At 2 o'clock, I have a call with my mom's doctor that I really have to answer. I will come as soon as it's done. Just she's been waiting for the appointment for 8 months. So
okay. You do whatever you have to. You know, that's not just a reasonable reason to possibly be late. That is definitely, absolutely. You take all the time you need. All we're doing today in tutorial is we're going to practice actually writing answers to the questions.
So we're going to write a script, right? For the whatever we're going to be talking during the video that we will make.
Yeah, so exercise 3.1 is sort of an advanced script. It's a draft so that I can make sure you're headed in the right direction. So I will be reading them, but they're not graded, but they will stand you in good stead as the beginning of a script for your video.
Great. I will join as soon as it's done. As soon as it's finished, I will. Thank you so much.
Please make sure you take all the time you need, okay?
Yes, it's like a third, what they call it. I'm not a primary doctor, endocrinologist, so it takes so much time to book any appointment with them.
Okay, so from my experience with doctors lately, you have to be there at the right time, but you also have to count on they're going to be late. Right, so that's why I said you are not to worry about what time class starts. You join us when you can.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. Thank you. And have everyone a good day. Bye.
Bye. Jason and Isabel, do you have questions? Or are you just hanging around? And if you are there, can you please let me know, because you're just hanging around. Okay. Jason, do you have a question? Are you there? Okay. So if neither of you has another, you do have a question. Okay, please go ahead, Isabel. I really hope so. If she sent it to me, I'll be able to email it out. Yes. So she just emailed me the link, and I am about to email it to students. I just need I need to get the list of students before I can do that. Okay, I just sent it. And I am about to change it on eClass. Okay, I need to go check this link. So unless you have another question, Isabel, I'm going to close the meeting. Okay, thank you. Jason, if you're there, I'm leaving. Have a good class, Isabel. See you later.